So now that we've reduced the polygons and we've finished our model, the next step is to cache things out. We don't want it to ever think about these poly-reduced things again as we make other changes to Alfred. So this is why you would cache something out. Let's press Tab and type File Cache. And this is what we use to save out our files. So I'm just going to connect it here. And let me give you guys a brief overview of what we have here. By the way, you can click these little move order things if you want to. That'll expand some windows. So I'm just going to expand this out a little bit so we really see what's going on. So up at the very top, we have load from disk, we have reload geometry, file mode, no operation, and geometry file. All right, so what does this all mean? Well, let's start with the geometry file. Right now it says $hip/geo/$hipname.$os.f.bgeo.sc. And that's a lot of dollar signs. And you might recall when we first set up our project that we saw some of these dollar sign expressions as well. And depending on what kind of expression is being said, remember how this all related to a path or a shorthand version of something, right? Last time we had $home and that was trying to put it in our documents folder. Well, $hip right here means take a look at wherever this file is saved. And once you find that, then go to a folder called geo and then do $HIPNAME, which is take the actual name of this save file, $OS, and $OS stands for the actual node name, so this is file cache 1. $F, that means take the frame, .bgeo.sc, and .bgeo.sc is simply the extension that Houdini uses when it's trying to save out cache files. So that might be a lot, and there might be a lot to remember, actually. You might kind of forget what some of those mean. If you do forget what these dollar expressions are trying to say, then hover over the text that says geometry file and just middle mouse, and you'll see what this expression resolves to. I'm going to middle mouse again to bring this back. And now that we've talked about saving, I think it would be a great idea to save because, man, I have been living on the edge. There we go, version 2. Okay. So we have file cache. Let's actually browse for this. Let's go $hip. Let's go to our geo. And let's actually just click. This is the original Alfred geo. We'll just say Alfred geo. We'll call this version 2.obj. Now, one thing you should know is that you can change the type of file that you're saving out by just typing its extension. So this obj is the file extension for 3D objects, right? So I typed obj, and that's good. And there's our geometry file. For right now, I'm going to skip over this load from disk in file mode. I'm going to come back to that here in a second. But the next thing you want to do is change your frame range. Now, we aren't saving an animation of any sort. We're just saving Alfred as one thing. So instead of a frame range, we can say save frame range only. This is a strict. And then you'll notice that we have these green boxes. And what does that mean? Well, if I middle click the text here, or sorry, if I just left click the text, you'll notice that we have more expressions. I know it's a lot of expressions in one day, but let me just tell you what this means. The F start and the F end, remember we go back to our global animation options, relate to the start and end of our project. If I change this end to, let's say 500, and I apply, it's 500. That's why this is written there like so. Anyway, if you want to get rid of that, right click, say delete channels. That got rid of all of our expressions. And now we can just type 0, 0. We don't need any frames. We don't need to save an animation. And we're good to go. From here, save to disk. Now I can double check that everything worked out. Here's all my videos. We can go to Geo, Alfred Geo version 2. and it saved it out. Cool. That's good. Now back to this load from disk in file mode. Let's say that I save this out, and now that it's saved out, I don't want it to write a file. I want it to just read the file I just made. I can say load from disk, and by doing that, it'll basically just load whatever this file is, and then it will continue on without actually trying to recook everything. Now, just out of habit, one thing that I do, and you don't have to do this, but it's one thing I do, is I make another file node, and I actually take this path and I read it into a new file that's not connected to any network whatsoever. That way I know, like, absolutely for sure that it's not going to try to cook anything up here because it's not even attached. The way to do this is we can simply just copy it. We can say Control-C and Control-V to the path, just like that, and that'll work. But there's actually an even better way of doing this. If we right-click the geometry file, we could say copy parameter. So we copy whatever this is, go to our file 2. If you right-click the text of geometry file, we can say paste relative references. And this is really cool because now instead of an absolute path that says only do, Alfred version 2, if in the future, for any reason, I want to make version 3, I could say version 3 and I could save it. And because this is referencing whatever value this is, it'll actually change what it reads to version 3. So now, if I middle mouse, you can see that it's version 3. If I change this to version 2, look at that, it's version 2. So that copy-paste relative reference is used all the time in Houdini, and it's definitely something that you should use because it just makes your life a lot more simple using it that way. All right, now that we are here, there's one last convention that I would recommend doing. Hit Tab, press Out, and make a little output node. We haven't talked about output nodes, and well, there's really not much to it, but basically this is, you can see it right here. It's like a little finish line flag. It's saying this is the end of Alfred Geo, at least for building the geometry. And no matter what, if anything down the road tries to look at Alfred Geo, it's going to go to the output. So anyway, that is a lot about caching. I know that is probably a lot of information just for a simple thing, but it's really good information to know, especially when you actually get to caching simulations and things like that. All of that information I just covered will come in super handy. That's enough about caching. Let's move on to materials in the next lesson.